Prepare yourself for a mind-blowing journey. Are you ready to uncover the chilling details behind one of the most terrifying real-life horror stories? The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It hit theaters in 2021. It sent shivers down spines worldwide. But here's the twist. This isn't just Hollywood fiction. It's based on a true story. A story so bizarre, so terrifying, that it defies belief. It all started in 1981, in the quiet town of Brookfield, Connecticut. A gruesome murder shook the community to its core. But it wasn't just the crime that was shocking, it was the defense that followed. The movie captivated audiences with its supernatural thrills. But the real story? Even more chilling. It involves demonic possession, a brutal killing, and a legal first. For the first time in United States history, a defendant claimed demonic possession as a defense for murder. As we dive into this true story, remember, reality can be stranger than fiction. The events you're about to hear about really happened. We're about to explore the true story behind The Conjuring 3, but let's take a fresh perspective on this crime. What if the demonic possession defense was a strategic move to challenge the legal system? Could it have been a way to introduce doubt and create a sensational trial? You'll gain insights into the crime, the shocking details, and the unprecedented legal defense. And here's a personal connection. I once visited Brookfield, Connecticut, and the eerie atmosphere of the town still haunts me to this day. So what do you think? Could there be more to our world than what meets the eye? February 16th, 1981, a date that would forever change the lives of those involved. It was a seemingly ordinary day in Brookfield, Connecticut, but by nightfall, it would become the scene of a horrific crime. The victim, Bono, a 40-year-old man who managed a local kennel. The details of the murder are gruesome. Bono was stabbed multiple times, not just once or twice, but over 20 times. The brutality of the attack was shocking. It wasn't just a murder. It was a frenzied assault that left the community reeling. The killer was identified as Arne Johnson, a 19-year-old tree arborist. Johnson didn't flee the scene. Instead, he made a claim that would turn this case on its head. He said he wasn't responsible because he was possessed by a demon at the time of the murder. Just when you think this case couldn't get any weirder, enter Ed and Lorraine Warren. If you're into the paranormal, you know these names. They're legendary ghost hunters. The Warrens had investigated some of the most famous haunted houses in America. But this case, it was different. The Warrens weren't called in after the murder. They were involved months before. Why? Because of Arne Johnson's girlfriend, Debbie Glatzel. Her younger brother, David, had been experiencing terrifying phenomena. The Warrens were brought in to help. Little did they know, they were stepping into a case that would make history. Ed and Lorraine Warren weren't your average ghost hunters. They were demonologists. They believed in the reality of evil spirits. And when they met David Glatzel, they were convinced. This wasn't just a haunting, it was a full-blown demonic possession, and it set the stage for the tragic events to come. Let's rewind a bit. Before the murder, before Arne Johnson's involvement, there was David Glatzel. He was just an 11-year-old boy. But according to his family, he was experiencing terrifying phenomena. It started with nightmares, but it quickly escalated into something much more sinister. David claimed to see a dark figure, an old man with sharp teeth and horns. This entity would appear to him, threatening to steal his soul. But it wasn't just David who saw these things. His family members reported witnessing bizarre occurrences too. Objects moving on their own, strange noises in the night, the temperature in rooms dropping suddenly. The Glatzel family was desperate for help. They turned to their church. Priests were called in to bless the house. But it didn't stop. If anything, the phenomena intensified. David's behavior became erratic. He would scream for hours. He spoke in strange voices. He knew things he couldn't possibly know. That's when the Warrens were called in. Section 5. Arne Johnson's desperate act. Arne Johnson was deeply in love with Debbie Glatzel, David's sister. He was a constant presence during the family's ordeal. He witnessed the exorcisms. He saw the toll it was taking on the family, and he made a decision that would change everything. He invited the demon to possess him instead. Why would anyone do this? Love makes people do crazy things. Johnson thought he could handle it. He believed he was strong enough to fight off whatever was tormenting David. But according to those close to him, Johnson's behavior began to change after that night. He became moody, aggressive. He would go into trances, staring blankly for hours. Months passed. Johnson and Debbie moved in together. They both worked at the kennel managed by Bono. On that fateful day in February, Johnson, Debbie, and Bono had been drinking together. Witnesses say Johnson suddenly became enraged. His eyes bulged. He growled like an animal, and then he attacked. Johnson stabbed Bono repeatedly with a pocket knife. Section 6. The devil made me do it. A shocking legal defense. The devil made me do it. It sounds like a bad joke, right? But for Arne Johnson's legal team, it was deadly serious. They planned to use demonic possession as a defense in a murder trial. It was unprecedented. Nothing like this had ever been attempted in a U.S. court of law before. Johnson's lawyer, Martin Minella, was determined to make history. He argued that his client was not guilty by reason of demonic possession. Minella claimed that Johnson was under the influence of satanic forces at the time of the murder. He wasn't in control of his actions. The devil, quite literally, made him do it. The prosecution, understandably, was skeptical. They argued that this was nothing more than an attempt to avoid responsibility for a heinous crime. They pointed to Johnson's history of drinking and fighting. They suggested that alcohol, not demons, was to blame for his actions. The stage was set for a legal battle unlike any other. Section 7. Courtroom drama. Skepticism meets the supernatural. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, curious onlookers, and paranormal enthusiasts filled every seat. As the trial began, it quickly became clear that this was no ordinary murder case. The defense was about to present evidence of the supernatural. But would the court allow it? Judge Robert Callahan was faced with a unique dilemma. On one hand, he had to ensure a fair trial. On the other, he had to maintain the integrity of the court. After careful consideration, he made a decision that would shape the course of the trial. He ruled that the defense of demonic possession was not valid under Connecticut law. This ruling was a blow to Johnson's defense team, but they didn't give up. They still hoped to introduce evidence of the supernatural events leading up to the murder. They wanted to call the Warrens as expert witnesses. They planned to present evidence of the exorcisms performed on David Glatzel, but at every turn they were met with skepticism from the court. Section 8. The Warrens' testimony, battling unseen forces. Despite the court's skepticism, Ed and Lorraine Warren were determined to have their say. They might not have been allowed to testify in court, but they spoke freely to the media. They painted a chilling picture of the events leading up to the murder. According to the Warrens, they had warned the authorities months before the killing. Ed Warren claimed he had told the police that Johnson was possessed. He said he had urged them to keep an eye on the young man. The Warrens believed that the demon that had possessed David Glatzel had indeed transferred to Arne Johnson. Lorraine Warren, known for her psychic abilities, described sensing a dark presence around Johnson. She spoke of seeing his face contort into something inhuman. The Warrens were convinced that Johnson had been under the influence of demonic forces when he killed Alan Bono. But here's the thing about the supernatural. It's hard to prove in a court of law. Section 9. Media frenzy and public reaction. As the trial progressed, the media circus around it grew. Newspapers ran sensational headlines. Devil on trial in Connecticut. Demon possession. A new legal defense. TV crews camped outside the courthouse. Everyone wanted a piece of this extraordinary story. The quiet town of Brookfield was thrust into the national spotlight. Public opinion was divided. Some people were convinced that Johnson was indeed possessed. They saw it as a battle between good and evil playing out in real time. Others were skeptical, viewing the whole thing as an elaborate hoax or a desperate attempt to avoid justice. The case sparked heated debates about religion, the supernatural, and the nature of evil. Section 10. The aftermath. Lives forever changed. On November 24, 1981, the verdict was announced. Arne Johnson was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter. The jury had not been swayed by the claims of demonic possession. Johnson was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. He ended up serving only 5 years, being released for good behavior in 1986. But the story didn't end with the verdict. The case left an indelible mark on all those involved. Debbie Glatzel stood by Arne throughout the ordeal. They eventually married while he was in prison. David Glatzel, the young boy at the center of the initial possession claims, struggled with the aftermath of his experiences for years. The Warrens' involvement in the case catapulted them to even greater fame. They wrote a book about the case, The Devil in Connecticut. It became a bestseller, but it also led to controversy. Section 11. Unresolved questions, a lingering mystery. Decades have passed since the trial, but questions still linger. Was Arne Johnson really possessed, or was it all an elaborate hoax? The case remains a topic of debate among paranormal researchers, legal scholars, and true crime enthusiasts. It continues to fascinate and perplex in equal measure. Some argue that Johnson's reduced sentence suggests that even the legal system wasn't entirely convinced of his full culpability. Others point out that his good behavior in prison doesn't align with the image of a demon-possessed killer. The truth, as is often the case with such mysterious events, remains elusive. The case has left a lasting legacy. It's been the subject of books, documentaries, and now a major Hollywood film. It serves as a reminder that sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And let's go!